Welcome back to our podcast. I'm the gentleman here with the disturbed Southern Belle,
Hello.
and today is likely going to be a bit of a shorter episode. I thought I would cover the Titan or the War of the Titans of Greek mythology, also known as the Titanomachy. The reason I wanted to start with the Titanomachy is because it's a fairly interesting story, and the reason it's going to be likely 2 or 3 episodes is because it's a fairly long one. It essentially is the beginning of the Greek mythos, the beginning of those stories, how everything came to be, the world and just existence and all the gods. This episode, being just a prologue, is gonna tell how the Titan War, how the Titanomachy started, what led up to it, and the birth of the Titans and the gods.
Okay, so at this point, there's nothing at all. There's no life, there's no nothing at the very beginning.
No, it is, as oddly enough, a lot of philosophers have stated, it's chaos. It is everything and nothing at the same time. That's how it's described.
Okay.
And then suddenly, Gaia, just she exists from nothing
And
and
Gaia
everything.
is Earth, right?
She is the personification of Earth, of life, more or less.
Okay.
So, with Gaia having been brought forth from nothingness, she grown lonely over time, as you can probably imagine, being literally the only thing in existence. So she brought forth the primordial beings. And keep in mind, these beings are not the Titans. They're what came before them. Essentially what end up giving birth to the Titans, which, yeah, they're never really referred to, as far as I've found, as anything other than the primordial beings.
Does it say what these beings look like or description or what they're supposed to be or
Not really, they're just, well, okay, hold on. So, these beings are Pontus, which is, he's the god of the sea, plus, before Poseidon or the tides.
Mhm.
He is pretty much Poseidon, but more, well, actually less powerful.
right?
Because it said that with each generation, the gods, the beings that came into existence, were more powerful, which will feed into what I'll cover later. Then there was Aureus, the deity of the mountains, which I didn't really find much on him, just he's the god of the mountains.
Mm.
And then someone that a lot of people are probably familiar with, Uranus. Don't know why his name is Uranus. It's actually kind of reminds me of the Roman gods because
Right.
the planets were named after them. But anyways, he was essentially the supreme deity among the primordials. However, still, he was supposed to actually be an equal to Gaia. They end up getting married. They get together. And they actually end up birthing the Titans. Back to Uranus, he was actually supposed to be the embodiment of the heavens, which makes sense if he's supposed to be the supreme deity among the other ones, the second generation.
Right.
And then, after the second generation had come forth, the chaos that created Gaia had actually created another being, the goddess Nyx, who, again, shares a similarity to a different mythology, Egyptian mythology in this case. And Nyx was actually the goddess of night, which it does make sense that that would come forth after Gaia had done created the earth and everything like that, because it was only after the creation of earth that night could exist. And so, after all of this happened, Gaia and Uranus would actually have their first child. And this would spark fear into Uranus because he had foreseen that his children would end up betraying him, would take his throne, which may seem similar because the exact same or the exact thing happens to Cronus, which is actually Uranus' child, the one that overthrows him, kind of full circle,
Yeah, so then he gets overthrown himself.
by his own son, Zeus.
Right. Okay.
However, fearing that his children would overthrow him, Uranus threw all of his children into Tartarus, which is essentially the depths of the earth, which is the depths of Gaia, actually, which return from whence you came.
Okay,
Kind of.
so he put them inside Gaia.
Kind of. Gaia and the earth are technically separate, but it's weird. They kind of share a link. For example, as mentioned in the story, having grown up in Tartarus and they had wanted to escape. So Uranus' children started banging on the walls of Tartarus. And that had actually hurt Gaia physically. It hurt her stomach.
Okay.
So not being able to take the pain anymore. And the story doesn't mention any emotional pain. This is purely just because of the physical pain of her children essentially beating her up from the inside. She conspired against Uranus and asked her children which of them would be willing to assassinate him, pretty much, to usurp him and take his. So, as some people know, and some of you have probably already guessed, the one to agree was Cronus. The other two didn't want to do anything, but it was stated that Cronus had been the most aspirational of them. And so, upon having Cronus agree, Gaia gave him a scythe with the blade made of diamond. I don't know why diamond specifically, but it was diamond.
Okay.
I guess because that was probably the hardest known material at the time.
It's likely, yes.
And now armed with a diamond scythe, somehow, I'm assuming Gaia helps, Cronus escapes Tartarus, which I have never heard of anything doing that before. He actually flew up, I guess now he has wings. He flew up to where his father lay sleeping, up in the clouds, I guess. And he castrated him.
Oh my God.
Yeah, with a scythe, he just cut off his balls,
Jesus.
which fell into the sea
Okay.
and gave birth to a lot of different life that emerged from the sea.
Like what? Yeah, sure.
Pretty much everything,
Okay,
more or
so
less.
all sea life came from his.
Not just sea life, humans.
Oh my God.
Yeah, that's where we come from.
Okay, that's interesting, but
It also made the sky turn red with his blood.
oh Jesus.
Yeah. I don't think it killed him. The story that I'm basing this episode off specifically never mentions.
So we just castrate him.
He just cut his balls off with a scythe.
And what happened to him? Did he just run away or?
I guess.
Okay, well, I guess I can't blame him there.
I don't know why he didn't kill him.
Yeah,
That's kind of the whole purpose.
exactly. Is he not afraid he might come back later to get revenge?
I don't think he does.
Well, I guess he may have proved his point and he just didn't have to do anything else.
Or he may have bled out.
Well, true.
Or he may have just killed him and it never says.
Right.
We don't know.
Yeah, that could be true too.
But yep, that's how everything came to be,
Oh.
living wise.
Okay, well.
Stuff comes along later on, of course, but I'm pretty sure that's how humans were supposed to have come.
Right.
And yeah, that's disgusting.
Yeah, to say the least. Okay, so Cronus is the one that actually goes on later on. He's like, he eats his children, doesn't he?
Cronus. Cronus doesn't exist.
Oh. And he's the one that actually eats his children and gets tricked into eating a rock, right?
Yep.
He thinks it's Zeus.
We cover that later too.
Okay.
Well, I cover that later too.
Okay.
Reacted.
Yeah, I remember that one.
Probably one of the most well-known Greek
definitely.
stories.
It's way up there, damn it.
That and the rape of Persephone.
Right.
That's probably another one of the most well-known.
Right.
Which probably we'll cover later, just not in the next couple episodes.
Okay.
And so now that his father has been dealt with, He returned down to Earth and freed his brothers from the pits of Tartarus. And, well, he was pretty much hailed as the new supreme deity. He was the god of gods at this point.
Okay, and at this point, there's still really not that many, like,
No.
people or, not necessarily people, but like the
Gods.
primordial beings, gods.
The deities.
And so there's not that many. There's still just the ones that you've already mentioned, more or less.
Yeah, there's like 4 Titans. There's Gaia, maybe Uranus, and there is Nyx.
Okay, so there's
That's all there is.
Okay.
Minus the beings that came from Uranus's testes, but we don't know about those yet.
Yeah, I'm not really counting those per se. Yeah, because you haven't mentioned those. I'm just
The only ones I know for sure that came from that event were the nymphs, like the water nymphs, and humans.
Okay.
That's it. That's only just because of different stories I've heard.
Right.
And anyways, Cronus was hailed as a hero and is now the supreme deity.
So people like him better, more or less.
Yeah, pretty much.
Well, it doesn't sound like the other one was too nice anyway, since
He wasn't nice, but he wasn't bad.
Okay.
But there wasn't really much people for him to be bad too.
Well, true.
At the point of Uranus' reign, there was literally just Nyx, Gaia, and his children who were gone at Tartarus.
Really, he kind of had a reason for what he did. He was actually rightfully so afraid of his children.
Yeah, because every generation is stronger than the last.
Right. Which is weird when you think about it.
Well. If you think of humanity's evolution, we have fallen so far from grace.
True.
So far.
But yeah. So, yeah.
Especially my generation.
Yeah. I mean, there's definitely some, I wouldn't say, we get stronger, like physically or mentally stronger with each generation per se. Just maybe better at certain things because you're more exposed to it. Like the younger generation would be better with like technology as opposed to like the old generations stuff.
Yeah, actually that is what it is, essentially.
Right.
That, and in this case, in case of the gods and the Titans, they are literally more powerful.
Right, and they have more powers and everything. So they are formidable, basically, as time goes on.
Yep. And there were a couple of beings, a couple of creatures that I forgot to mention, but they don't really play a part at all. They were the generation before the Titans, but after Gaia. They were Gaia and Uranus's first children. They were the Hecatonchires, 100-armed beings. Apparently hideous. I mean, just absolutely awful to look at.
They sound pretty grotesque, yes.
And then there were the Cyclops, which is fairly self-explanatory. They had one eye. That was it. They were the first to be locked up, and then followed the Titans. Which, they were also the only ones that didn't get freed. Cronus didn't want to free them because they were too dangerous. Especially for the newly formed life forms on Earth. And so, Cronus just left the Hecatonchires and the Cyclops at Tartarus. And so, that was a future enemy. And they'll come in to play during the actual War of the Titans.
So then I guess that means at some point they do get free.
They do get freed, eventually.
Do they free themselves or does somebody else free them?
I'm not sure, actually.
It doesn't really say? Okay.
It does say, I just hadn't looked that far into the story yet.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I wanted to segment, but I didn't want to look too far ahead.
Right. Okay.
I didn't want to kind of tempt myself to make this episode longer.
Right.
Because I know that the actual War of the Titans lasts for a while.
Right.
So, yeah.
I got it.
So, now that it was Cronus' time to reign, he was just like his father. I mean, he was pretty bad.
Right.
He was ruthless.
Was he worse?
I'd say yeah, because there was more people to be ruthless to.
Right.
He had actual creatures beneath him. He had a civilization, a bunch of civilizations.
So then it wasn't necessarily such a great thing that he assassinated his father then.
No, the only reason he did was to free his brothers.
Right.
And not even all his brothers.
And probably to get the power.
Probably.
as well.
Because he was the most ambitious.
Right.
He wanted that power. He wanted to
Exactly.
be on top.
So he might have been plotting this ever since he heard the story, then possibly even.
Probably, yeah.
And just maybe it wasn't mentioned, but that does sound like probably something he ought to have been doing. If he was really ambitious, he probably knew the story and probably thinking he was going to be the one that did it, and he technically was.
Yeah.
Was he like a huge, like a titan as well? I mean, he was supposed to be really big, wasn't he?
They can shapeshift.
Oh,
Kind of.
okay. I didn't know that.
Kind of like the gods could. Like, you know how Zeus transforms into a swan?
Right. And
How he
an
transforms
eagle
into
and
birds.
right. I got you. Okay.
The originals were huge.
Yeah.
I don't think they could do that. I think they were just massive.
Gaia and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gaia, Uranus, they're huge.
Yeah. I've never seen her depicted as anything but like
A giant
monstrous
woman.
thing.
That's pretty much what she is, a giant woman
And I
made out of
remember,
earth.
right, even on like the God of War, I mean, she was so humongous. I mean, he was inside her at one point, like fighting.
Yeah.
And
Like,
she
you get
was
the view of Kratos against her heart.
exactly
And her heart is massive.
huge compared to even him. I mean, it's ridiculous. So she's got to be gigantic.
She is. I don't know. I'm fairly certain they could transform like the
Right.
later generations
Yeah,
could.
I've never heard of her being able to, or never seen it depicted or anything. So I'm pretty sure she probably couldn't. I'm guessing though she was supposed to be one of the weaker ones since she was one of the first. I mean, she has strength and everything, but the ones.
But then you got to realize that she could create something out of nothing, whereas Uranus couldn't.
Right.
So she had a certain amount of power more than Uranus had, more than any of the others.
Oh, okay.
Him and Nyx.
Right.
But, anyways, yeah, he was much worse than Uranus was.
Right.
And he had actually found a woman, another goddess.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm assuming she was a goddess. I don't think mortals can become gods. At least I can't think of any stories where I've heard that.
I can't think of one either right off the top of my head.
I know, like, God of Wars, go back to that. I know Kratos was immortal, but he killed Ares. After Ares had already given him power.
Exactly.
Which is another thing. There was a Kratos in Greek mythology.
Oh, really?
Yeah, except it was spelt with a C instead of a K.
Right.
And not anywhere near a god of war.
Well,
he was a philosopher.
I imagine not, no.
Kratos, there was a philosopher named Kratos, but I think there was also a god named Kratos.
Oh, okay.
Which I think might have been the original inspiration for that name.
Right.
But back to the story, Cronus had found a woman whose name was Rhea. She, I'm fairly certain, was a goddess. She was loved and adored by everyone. However, it was Cronus that eventually got her because of his status as the supreme deity.
Did she go with him willingly or?
Yeah.
Okay.
She wanted Cronus.
Oh, okay.
Which actually is another thing. Cronus, I'm pretty certain, was the youngest. And so was Zeus. They each overthrowed their father while being the youngest. It's kind of funny because it's another thing that circles back.
Right.
Another constant, I guess.
Yeah.
Even Zeus himself came close to being overthrown by one of his children several times.
Well, that's understandable.
Although they were demigods because he had a thing for mortals.
Oh, yeah, he did.
A lot of them did.
He was not a good guy either. So.
He was not. He was very much one of the worst.
He's bad. He did a lot of disgusting things.
Disgusting, like turning into a swan to have sex with a woman.
I know, just
because she had a thing for swans.
Exactly. It's just like whatever, man.
Anyways, back to Cronus. He and Rhea had eventually had their first child, which something I didn't know here was that it was Hestia. Actually didn't know she was the oldest. I thought the only children they had were the big three, Zeus, Poseidon, and Hades. But no, it was Hestia. And Cronus had saw that she was more powerful than anyone else. And that kind of scared it.
Right.
Rightfully so. and he didn't like it. He didn't trust it because of his father and what he did to his father.
Right.
And then one day, his father's spirit came to him and warned him of his fate, that he would share the same fate
That he saw.
that he suffered. And that brought out the monster, like the true monster in
Cronus.
Cronus. Yeah. When he asked to hold Hestia, he devoured her.
Odd.
She was the first one. And this devastated Rhea, naturally, and very understandably so. This was her daughter, her
Right.
first daughter.
Right.
And this happened again with Rhea's second daughter. And then with Poseidon, and then with Hades. Each time it hurt Rhea more than the last. And until eventually she couldn't take that pain anymore. Uh, when she had become pregnant with her last child, Zeus,
Right.
she left Cronus, fled from him, and went to the island of Crete, where she hid in a cave until she gave birth. And then, as much as it pained her to do so, she knew she had to leave to go back to Cronus before he suspected anything.
Right.
And so she left Zeus as a baby with the nymphs and human soldiers who would actually bang on their shields with their weapons in order to mask the cries of Zeus.
Huh.
Because he was a god and it would be pretty loud. There was no way that Cronus would be able to hear it.
Right.
But before leaving, she grabbed a large stone, which a lot of people are going to know about this part of the story, and she wrapped it in a cloak. And when she returned, Cronus immediately grabbed the child, what he thought was a child, and ate it.
Right.
I guess whole, because there's no other way he wouldn't have known it was a rock.
Right.
And Rhea was actually happy because she had saved Zeus. She had spared his life. And so Zeus was raised by the nymphs and the human soldiers, and he drank from a mythical goat.
So he nursed from a goat.
Yeah,
Okay.
drank goat milk.
I guess that'd work.
Yeah, people drink goat milk all the goat milk.
Right.
Goat milk all the time.
Right.
Couldn't talk. And so, as Zeus had grown up, he was informed of what was happening in the world by an eagle, which eventually grew to be his animal. Which most of the gods have their own, like, mythical animal that they do. The eagle was Zeus's. It was his favorite. I guess this is why. But, anyways, eventually Zeus had grown old enough to kind of know, or at least they deemed he was old enough to know what was going on, and a messenger, an old woman, arrived, which she told him what happened to his brothers, about his father, and that he was a god. And she gave him a potion, which she explained would make Cronus puke up his children, Zeus's brothers and sisters. Reason Zeus took this all in stride. He accepted it all immediately, which he probably would have noticed something was off, that he wasn't a normal human, because that mythical goat milk was supposed to make him stronger. It was supposed to enhance his powers, so to speak, bring him to godhood faster, pretty much. Which is kind of weird, because that's supposed to bring him godhood faster than his own mother's milk.
That is weird.
I don't know why, but yeah. And since that's the case, I don't know why that goat is on Earth rather than up with the gods.
Good question.
Actually, I think the gods are on Earth, technically.
Right.
I don't think they have a place yet. I know that they do have, like, Titans have a home. I forgot what it's called. It's in the script somewhere. But yeah, it's kind of like Mount Olympus, but not.
Right.
Anyways, Zeus accepted all this and he began to learn how to fight. And after, let's say, a few years, he went out on his journey to kind of free his brothers and sisters. I don't know how they're still alive. In the story, it's very well explained that they are alive. They are adults in their father's stomach.
Okay, so they grew up in his stomach.
Yeah, all four of them.
Hey,
All four of them plus the rock.
so this is another person who has no stomach acid or anything, apparently.
Apparently not.
Alrighty.
Apparently also doesn't excrete anything.
Evidently not, no.
Because I don't see how that rock is still in his stomach.
Uh-huh.
He would know.
You would think, yeah.
Anyways, once Zeus had went out and started his journey, he came upon the mountain, which is called Orthrus. Orthrus the fortress.
Huh.
It is actually described to be a fortress on top of a mountain.
Okay.
And so Zeus had disguised himself as a mortal, and when he approached his father, he gave him the potion under the guise of it being a delicacy, which at this point, Cronus felt immortal. He felt like he couldn't be hurt by anything. Because as far as he knew, he had eaten all his children.
Right.
The prophecy would never come to pass. And so he drank the potion.
Oh, so he's really cocky at this point, basically.
He is. He is so cocky that he drank something that a complete stranger gave him.
Right.
Without checking it.
Had no clue what it was. Could be poison, could be anything.
Nope. Just chugged the whole thing.
Well, why wouldn't you?
It almost immediately made him sick. And he eventually threw up his children, which were, in order from oldest to youngest, Hestia, Hera, I'm pretty sure Hades, and then Poseidon. I'm pretty sure Poseidon's the middle brother. I say middle brother because there were three brothers.
Right.
Yeah. Anyways, yeah, so they just ran.
Uh-huh.
They didn't take advantage of the fact that their father was sick and currently puking his guts out, including the rock.
I guess they were just happy to be free.
Yeah, the rock was also thrown up. But so ends the saga of the rock.
Yeah.
Anyways, yeah, they just ran. They didn't bother fighting him, trying to kill him. And that's pretty much it. They just ran off to Mount Olympus, where they set up their headquarters.
Uh-huh.
Which would actually become the home of the gods.
Right.
And that's it for the prologue to the War of the Titans.
Okay, so Zeus gave him a potion, he threw up everybody, and they all ran off and formed Mount Olympus. And I'm going to assume we're going to start plotting against.
Yeah, they are starting to plot against and how they'll deal with the Titans.
So they're mad at all the Titans at this point.
Yeah. And
even though all the
Cronus,
Titans didn't do anything.
they're all bad. All the Titans were pretty bad. They all backed up their brother.
Oh.
They all backed up Cronus.
Even Gaia?
Gaia did not.
Oh, okay.
Then again, Gaia is not a Titan, technically.
Oh, okay.
She is considered a celestial being, a primordial.
Okay.
No, Gaia is good.
Oh.
She's one of the very few beings that I would consider to be actually good.
Right. All right. So they're up there and they're going to plot, and I guess we're going to pick up next week and talk about
the actual War of the Titans.
They're plotting and scheming and what's going to take place.
Yep. So next week I will be hosting again, and we will talk about War of the Titans, and depending on how long that goes on, may end with that. But we will do maybe one more episode, just depending on how long that War of the Titans lasts. On it depends on if we'll cover that by itself or if we'll include the next event, pretty much.
Right.
And then after we finish with the War of the Titans, 2 or 3 episodes, we will start back with the Bell.
Yep. We're going to be talking about some ghosts. When I take back over, we're going to be talking about some ghosts from Alabama, actually. initially, since that's where we're from, we're going to talk about some of the more famous ghosts in Alabama. And then we're going to move around the country at some point and possibly some other countries and things like that. Talk about some of the more famous ghost stories and things like that.
And I guess that's going to wrap us up.
All right. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Leave a comment if there's anything you want us to cover. And don't
Don't
forget
forget to
to
stay
stay disturbed.
disturbed.